Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Honeya, and we are approaching the end of our wellness unit. I know it has been a long time coming, but we're going to be closing out this week with physical wellness, and you guys will have your first major assignment at the end of this week. So definitely, keep an eye on that. Make sure it happens, and make sure we get that stuff done. As always, go back and get done anything that you are missing. But for today and tomorrow, we're going to focus on physical wellness. All right. So, what is physical health, physical wellness? It's basically doing things to take care of our body. So, what sort of things can you think of? Many of you probably think of things such as, like exercise and eating right. But just for the sake of notes, go ahead and just write down some other things that you can think of. Maybe you could steal from your little list that you did, earlier last week. But overall, we've already discussed certain things. But what sort of things you put them? Just like put one or two things in place of that for your notes. Then, how do we measure it? There's several ways that we can measure our physical wellness. The first one is body composition, which is basically what our body is composed of: fat, muscle, bone, and other tissues. Also, not to mention water. And there are typically two ways that we can really measure it. We can either do it through skin fold test or bioimpedance analysis. So, skin fold test, they put skin fold calipers on you, measure your skin folds, and then that's how they measure your body composition. And then there's also the bioimpedance analysis, which is where electrical signals, basically go through your body and kind of sort of measure your body fat. So that is kind of how we get an idea of your body composition. Now, the other area is BMI, which is your body mass index, and we will touch base on that more as we move into sports. But it's basically a measure of your weight to your height, and that is what your body mass index is. And what happens is when you measure your weight to your height, you end up getting a number. Now, this number fits into a category and can be used to screen for potential complications related to obesity. So, like I know one of the big things is people who have a body mass index over 30 are considered obese. So the big thing is looking at that is like, for example, if you have a BMI of over 30, that may seem you may be viewed as someone who is obese, and you may be put at risk of health complications because of that. But the other big issue is that it does not account for your actual body composition. So while a lot of people say, "Oh, we can measure our body composition through BMI," not necessarily, because, for example, it only measures your weight to your height, but does not tell you where that weight comes from. So, for example, if you are extremely fit. So you have these NFL players who are extremely fit. They weigh, 220, 230, 240, but they have very low body fat. That's where they have a high weight to height. So, it's essentially they have a high BMI, but once again, they aren't considered to be obese because once again, that weight is more in their muscle and not their fat. The other way we measure it is through aerobic fitness. So this is also how we measure our health, physical health, which is the measure of heart and lung function. Whew, sorry, my hearts and lungs are trying to get me some oxygen this morning. Is the measure of heart and lung function to supply oxygen to the body. So, what is the best way to measure? Is simply to do aerobic activity and see how you feel. So, and some people say it's one of those things. Just think about how you were, earlier in the year before you went to school. Maybe you spent a lot of time hanging around all summer or things of that nature, and then all of a sudden you go back to school, you go back to work. Are you a little bit winded walking around campus? Are you a little bit winded going back to work and you're walking around a lot more? So, that's the thing is measuring how you feel. Another good one is to walk up and down stairs and see how many flights of stairs you can get up before literally you are winded and tired and trying to catch your breath. More official tests, however, are the VO2 max test, which that is where one can go in, walk on a treadmill hooked up to a breathing apparatus, and it's typically administered by a doctor and will basically give you a reading on your cardiovascular lung function. And then also the beep test, which I'm sure many of you have probably taken in your early years of elementary school, where you run back and forth across a distance to the sounds of beeps. So you one beep, one run to one side, beep, run to the other side, beep, and it's the idea to see how long you can go until you give out. The other thing that we also use to measure our physical health is flexibility, and this is the measure of the range of motion of your body and joints. Now, the big problem with this is that it only really gets tested during physical therapy treatments or when you get older or when something is wrong. All right. So, for example, you start, trying to move your arm a certain way, you try to move your neck a certain way, and all of a sudden it hurts to move it that way, and you're like, oh, this hurts. I need to go to the doctor. So that's when you go to the doctor. They recommend, physical therapy, stretches, that sort of stuff. So it's the only real time that we start really looking at the idea of flexibility as a measure of physical wellness. So how do we fix this? Well, the important thing is to do stretches and exercises that put your body through a range of motion. As we get towards the end of sports nutrition, you guys will start seeing the different kinds of stretches that we have that will put your body through a different ranges of motion. So, even if you're not, huffing and puffing and, doing physical exercises, stretches are still really good to help maintain that flexibility and maintain that mobility, along with looking at putting your body through a range of motion in your exercises. So not just doing one type of exercise, but doing exercises that put your body through a full range of motion. So if you're constantly going in there and doing like bench presses or lifting weights, are you doing other things that, exercise your legs, that exercise your core, that really focus on that flexibility? Then we have one that many of us are very familiar with, which is muscular strength and endurance. And this is the amount and length of time of which your muscles can exert a force. Now, very common at home tests are push-ups and sit-ups. Those are kind of given. So the thing is, how long can you go for it? So if you just go sit down and bang out as many push-ups and sit-ups as you possibly can, how long can you go? And how many can you do to basically measure, the amount and length of time of which your muscles can exert that force. So those are pretty good tests, very simple at-home tests. But obviously, when you start getting into the physical realm of exercise science, it's going to be a little bit more in depth. So then finally, we have just other healthy habits, which, eating healthy foods. All right, that's very important. We know this to be true and know it's important to eat healthy foods. Are you eating foods that are calorie dense, but also good calories and are allowing you to have the energy to do what you need to do? Proper bathing and hygiene, making sure that you're taking care of yourself, bathing yourself, keeping yourself clean, and then also making sure that you're brushing your teeth, flossing, and things of that nature. Consuming water and getting enough sleep. We talked about this last week. And then also making smart decisions about drugs and alcohol. So, avoiding drugs and alcohol, making sure that you're, not partaking in vaping, making sure that you're not partaking in um, any sort of drugs, illicit drug use, and things of that nature. And then, alcohol is one of those things that as you get older, when you become legal to consume, making sure that, if you do choose to drink, that you drink responsibly when you are of age, and making sure that you're making those smart decisions because, those habits are very important. For example, even things such as outside of these things that I've mentioned, things like wearing a seatbelt, wearing a helmet when you're doing like biking or riding a motorcycle or things of that nature. Those things are healthy habits that will protect your overall physical health and basically lower your risk of injury. And that is a very important component. So these are your notes for the day. Go ahead, get them submitted, and you guys have your assignments due for the rest of class.